Hello there, and welcome to the Rambling to Myself podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we are in the music corner, and we'll be reviewing Blink-182's latest release, 9. Apologies for the audio quality, my microphone isn't set up yet in my student accommodation, so I'm using my phone instead today. I'll start off by covering some of the tracks I have comments on and then move on to my final thoughts on the album as an overall. Timestamps on the screen if you just want to skip straight to the end for the full album review. And without further ado, let's begin. Hey, it's me from the future. I just got a set of AirPods and gave the album a spin, and hot damn does it just push the album to another level. I think this album was probably mixed on AirPods, so if you do have a pair lying around, do give it a try. It sounds much better. Although I would still recommend speakers over headphones if you don't have AirPods to borrow from anyone. This video is not sponsored by Apple. Anyways, because of this, I'll be adding another transmission at the end of my track reviews to touch on some of the huge positives, as I noticed my review was lacking on compliments and the positives on certain tracks. This won't affect the full album review at the end, so the timestamp earlier is still relevant. The first time. Mark's time with Alex shows as the song feels very all-time low up to the chorus, where it goes into this classic Blink sound, reminiscent of their Take Off Your Pants and Jacket and Untitled Days. The song is short and simply fantastic, and if this song was released long ago, I would sure as hell have heard it at least 1,000 times by now. Probably the closest we get to a pure pop punk song on the album, as the album's pop influences begin to bleed in more and more from this point onwards. Happy Days. The song is great, but the production is really lacking. Drums sound like they're about to clip out of the room at times, and there's also some very clear clipping at the end of choruses, which is Vocals also sound a little too loud at times, especially in the second verse where there are less instruments to take up the space of the song. On the plus, the song is really catchy and fun to listen to. Plus, the ending to the track is very nicely done with a touch of extra speed. Heaven. The track is so plus 44 when it hits the chorus, probably what they would have sounded like if they released another record. I wish the whole track was more like the chorus where it's more plus 44 influence for consistency's sake. While I'm not a fan of the weird phaser effect in Matt's voice and the somewhat blatantly obvious autotune that sticks out especially in the bridge, which is a shame because he sings pretty damn well on the album anyways, and it kind of ruins the mood of the song a bit. Dark Side. Ignoring the music video and the cringy ads I see on YouTube all the time, I really like this song. Like most songs on the album, it's simple catchy fun with plenty of replay value. It's a nice choice of a single and has a lot of sing-along potential. Matt's harmonies are also great in the pre-choruses, turning into this almost choir-like sound. Also, I like Mark singing on the second verse. The song is very Alkaline Trio meets Simple Creatures, and fans of agony and irony or disaddiction will be pleasantly surprised. Blame It On My Youth. It seems Blink has turned the volume to 11 to this track as the clipping starts right off the bat, the drums almost exploding off the volume meter. Probably the first real dud of the album, as I find myself dozing off at times, trying hard not to skip over this track. Sounds a lot like a very generic 2000s pop punk song made using synths and pop music. Whilst most of the songs up to this point have had a nice build up to phenomenal choruses, this song lacks that extra punch, so the song just ends up sounding very flat throughout. I do like the little Tame Impala-esque ending, which lasts for just about 5 seconds. Generational Divide. It does seem like Blink loves to throw their best melody into the shortest songs they can create, but holy shit, is this song mixed horribly. I still remember when people first heard this song and thought it was a leaked demo because Matt Skiba sounded like he just forgot to record his lines, so he tossed his best iPhone recording through GarageBand, and I'm really surprised they still didn't fix it. Runaway. I initially made a comment about Mark singing being a little too monotone, but I do feel with a few more listens, it is better as you come in knowing this new compressed, gain-heavy singing style adopted by Mark. Though it is particularly noticeable on this song, even on speakers. The song is alright, but not much of it stands out for me. Black Rain. So Mark, what happened to this being a full Matt track? The verses literally sound like Alkaline Trio too. He would have sounded great. There are parts reminiscent of Can't Escape the Gravity, which is nice because I like that song. Personally, I wish the song went all in after it started getting heavy, but that's just personal preference. The touch of Angels and Airwaves notes in the end of Matt's second part is also really nice, along with the slow grimy build up to the final chorus. The song also feels a little cut off at the end, and I wish there was just a bit more to pull the song together, but all in all, very nice. I Really Wish I Hated You. I didn't really listen to the singles on their own before the album hit because I was a bit disappointed with Blame It On My Youth. So hearing this song was pretty fresh for me. I really like this track. It hits all the right notes and it's really consistent from front to back. And over time, the song really crept up on me and probably my favorite song off the record. I'm not sure if there's a extra layer of synth guitars on the chorus, but they do sound really good. And the vocal performance on this song are also really solid. Matt's harmonies are perfection and really add a layer of depth to the whole song. Pin the Grenade. Is it just me or do the vocals not really fit the song? Not sure what it is, but Mark sounds like he's singing another song at certain parts of the first verse. This is especially obvious when Mark is shouting "Don't Want to Let Go" the first time. Matt sounds fine throughout though. Though the song is a little on the generic side, it's still fun to listen to, so I give it extra points for that. Now we enter the speed round. I found like most of the other songs I was repeating a lot of my points, so I didn't really have much to talk about, so here we go. No Heart to Speak Of. I wish this was a Matt only song. He really carries the track. Also the outro is great. Ransom. Not gonna lie, when this song started, I thought I was gonna suck massive balls because of the autotune. But then the chorus comes in and we're transported back to Dude Ranch. Got baited, but a song that's only half good is also half bad, so on some emo shit. I initially didn't enjoy this track as much due to the conflicting sounds, but I've come to warm up to what the band is doing on this album, and this has slowly become one of my favorites on the album. Hung Over You. The song is clearly pop inspired, and I don't really have much to pull from the track itself. I much prefer listening to Joji rather than a pop punk rendition of Ballads 1. Probably would have worked out a bit better if the song sounded more like the ending with the trip hop lo-fi instrumentation instead. Remember to Forget Me. I like the dark atmosphere and build up to the end. Sounds a bit nitpicky, but the pig flaking noises at the climax were a bit grating. So this is the airport section I was talking about earlier. Basically, I'm just going to touch on the positives of certain tracks and why they sound better on AirPods. So, the guitar sounds so crisp and the tone is amazing. From the flickering palm mutes to the grand anthemic choruses. The sub basses are also a bit more prominent and the vocals are generally much wider and sound like they fit into the song much better. I find it difficult not to jump about when listening to this track every time I hit play. Though the clipping and loudness is still pretty prevalent, the far more defined bass synths really help carry the song and the harmonies are also much wider and pretty nice to listen to. Not a fan of the drum mix though. The atmospheric layers from the rewinding tapes to the pianos are also much more prevalent and add this real level of depth to the song that was mostly flat on speakers. And this is especially astounding in the bridge. The guitar tone is also goddamn amazing and the ability to pick out the keyboard in the background really helps the track as it adds a layer of atmosphere and melody to the already beautiful guitars. I think the guitars sound just a touch better on speakers as the choruses sound a little too loud, though the drums are mixed pretty much perfectly and Travis's playing is really highlighted here. The hit of bass in the Disco Nightmare verses are really neat. Also, a lot more of the layering is better pronounced towards the end, which makes the build into the eargasmic and even better, as they just sound so huge and crushing. Similar to the first time, the guitar tone is really amplified and far clearer, which adds an extra layer of energy to the song. The background palm mute tremolo guitars, which were almost invisible on speakers, are also a nice touch to give the song an extra boost of speed. Probably the most emotional piece on the album. A lot of the despair really shines through the vivid lyrics and singing, with a great fusion of broken disco and some of the saddest Plus 44 riffs littered throughout the track. And that outro, woo! The touch of Plus 44 and Alkaline Trio in the songs are also quite notable and far more noticeable than the generic stuff we got back in California, as Mark and Matt finally seem to get to flex their own songwriting abilities instead of writing generic pop-punk tracks. Most of Matt's natural vocal delivery is phenomenal on the album, and it seems he has become the dominant singer as Mark is mostly monotone in delivery. Seems like they finally realized Matt sings in the Alkaline Trio and let him do his thing rather than try to replicate Tom or blend with Mark like back when Bored to Death was first released and everyone thought they sounded the same. The album is very catchy from front to back as most of the hooks are excellent, and I do appreciate the variation of instrumentation and synth choices, which adds freshness as opposed to in California where every song was just the same thing. However, on the more technical side of things, the production on the album is generally a little flawed, as seen in the general loudness of everything throughout the album. I would suggest newcomers to steer clear of using headphones and recommend people to use speakers to really enjoy the album, as most of the poor mixing choices and loud nuances I complain about on tracks are mostly gone on speakers. I do feel the album is a little too long and would have fared better as a 10 to 12 track album, as a lot of the elements do get repeated and it's quite hard to sit through from front to back if you're not preoccupied with something else. To throw out some examples, the usage of the typical California riffs where they only move the root notes for variation, as well as the overuse of simple tempo switch-ups in tracks like Runaway, Happy Days and Pin the Grenade. In comparison, California does feel easier to sit to the end as a lot of the tracks were a lot shorter, with the difference between the two albums being about 7 to 8 minutes. Though in terms of production and songwriting alone, 9 is far superior to California by a good margin, and the lyrics have far more depth. In a way, it resembles the Plus 44 album where a lot of the songs were quite unpolished and had similar elements as Mark was trying to find his own sound back then from scratch. The bounce back between Mark and Matt also feel more natural, although I do wish there was at least one track where someone led from start to finish instead of swapping around, as I'm sure most of the subreddit does. I suppose the album can be seen as Blink finally finding a good sound they can perch on in their post-Tom days. I'm very pleasantly surprised by this release, as I was initially expecting a letdown pop album like Renegades when Blame It On My Youth first hit. But I'm glad the end product was great, and I'm quite excited to see where they can go with this, as it is looking pretty good if they decide to develop their newfound style. I do fear that there is a chance they may pull a Fall Out Boy and head in the direction of Hung Over You rather than what the fans are seemingly enjoying on the record, but I suppose we'll just have to see. And that's about all there is from me this time. Do let me know what you guys thought about the album in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.